Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of Constructive Criticism. I'm your host, Spencer, and I am joined by my co host, Matt Kling.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good, man. I am, you know, just getting over New Year's, which I stayed up till 5 a.m. for some reason, and I think I'll be tired forever now. I think that's part of being like 30.
Yeah, you just never get over it.
Yeah, you stay up late one night and you're done.
Yeah,
It's over.
this is just your life now.
Yeah. Speaking of our life now, don't forget to check out our sponsors. We have two sponsors now, Matt. First one being PureMTGO.com. They're sponsored by MTGO Traders. Matt, I use MTGO Traders a lot. Like, legitimately, I just use it all the time. So it's really cool to kind of have the sponsorship going into the entire Constructive Criticism Network now. So there will be an ad at the beginning of every show that's just kind of talking about how we're on Pure MTGO now, and it's super cool to have a sponsor to do that for the entire network.
Yeah, definitely. They're just a quality service. So
Yeah, they're a good one. So yeah, check out puremtgo.com and check out the other content on the Constructive Criticism Network when you're doing that. Our other sponsor though is Oasis Games. You can get 15% off your first order by using the code CCMTG at checkout, and you can get 4% off of every order by using the code Would That Be Good. There's a little problem with that last week. I just for some reason couldn't remember which was which, but that is the correct ones. I'm positive now.
I think we came to the right conclusion.
I think we did too. I don't know why. I've been saying it every week since episode 13. I don't know. So, but no, it's cool to have two amazing sponsors, and just already was talking to my wife this week about setting dates for the last three Constructive Criticism Opens and the Invitational. So things are moving along, man. This is awesome. Well, Matt, this week we don't have a Patreon question. We don't have any patrons to shout out. But we do have an awesome episode planned this week. Before we get to our main topic, which is going to be what other games have taught us about Magic, let's talk about always improving. No contest updates this week for me or you. Instead, let's kind of just go through our normal how we did this week. What did we work on? You want to lead?
Sure. Well, I'm getting ready for a Team Modern Open this weekend in Columbus, so I've been prepping for that a lot. I think that I, specifically to improve in a general sense, I kind of had to get over the hump of not wanting to test in a format that I've already tested. Basically, like, when I feel like I've tested a format sufficiently, I often won't go back to it, but I think it's really important to test the matchups recently.
Do you think that
And
you learned
it's
anything
always
from it?
it's always important to realize that there's going to be new tech and stuff.
Yeah.
Did I learn anything from it? Well, I think it's just more of a motivational thing. Like I learned to keep myself motivated.
Sure. And you are teaming with Mason Clark, and what is Will's last name?
Corson?
There we go. So
Yeah.
hopefully,
Will has won a GP in the past. Is my understanding. So
oh, awesome, cool.
Yeah.
So two GP top 8 competitors in Mason.
yeah. And then Mason's gonna carry us. It's gonna be great.
Exactly. With that being said, I'll go on to my side. Speaking of Mason carrying people, he has to do that every time we play Smash together because I'm so bad. But this week, I did not play a lot of Magic until yesterday. Like, I just wasn't playing Magic. I wasn't feeling it. But I kind of took a step back from Magic for the week. But it's funny because I came back really refreshed. Even today, I was kind of noticing different intricacies of certain matchups and things like that I just could feel that I was playing autopilot mode like 2 weeks ago. And it's really nice to kind of get back off of that autopilot mode and back into the actual flow of the game and trying to, that was an interesting play choice by them. Here's the things that they could have. And it breaks down really differently for me, I find, when I'm on autopilot mode. I don't know if you have this experience too, Matt, but when I'm kind of on autopilot, I have this problem where everything suddenly feels out of my control in Magic. Like, I don't have any control. Like, for some reason, my brain processes wins and losses very weirdly when I'm in autopilot mode. Very much more of a, well, I'm mulligan to 5 that game and stuff like that. And today I ended up winning on mulligans to 4 and things like that I think just don't happen when you're in autopilot mode. I think that those are usually the kind of games where you're just going to concede pretty prematurely and things like that. And it was nice to get back into Magic in a more refreshing way.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, you're just going to play worse if you're in autopilot mode. My biggest thing with autopilot isn't even necessarily that my results are a lot worse. My biggest thing about autopilot mode is that my progress is much worse.
Oh yeah.
Like I just don't learn anything for large periods of time if I'm not trying to.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. And also, when I'm not learning, I don't find myself engaged at all in things. And that's just the kind of person I am. It's very important to me to, like you said, have those progressions, and it's a lot harder when you're just going through the motions.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's kind of something that I improved at by noticing and kind of taking a step back and evaluating. So
It's actually something that I'm going to touch on a little bit when we get into what other games have taught us. So that's kind of a nice little preview.
should we segue? I mean, I know this episode's gonna be short because you got a plane to catch. So, but look, we can absolutely kind of go forward and talk about this really quickly. So
Sure.
when this is an episode that Matt, I think you wanted to do.
Yeah, it was something that I had suggested a couple weeks back, and taking some time to collect some thoughts on the subject.
So what was something that you thought that brought you to want to do an episode on things that other games have taught us about Magic?
Well, the biggest reason why I came up with the episode, at least, was because I was specifically trying to come up with a topic that we might be able to do on the podcast, and I was playing another game at the time, and I just, I don't know, it just clicked for me that the game that I was playing at the time was Hearthstone, and Hearthstone has actually taught me a lot about how to be better at playing Magic,
Awesome.
and I think that's something that I just wanted to share with everybody. So
Should we start there?
sure. So the main thing that Hearthstone specifically has taught me about playing Magic is, so when you're playing Hearthstone, the card pool is a lot more limited, and not only that, but like because of the fact that you know what hero your opponent is playing, you already have a pretty good idea of what they're playing even from the start. So it's a lot easier to plan your turns based around what their best possible turn could be.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that I do a lot in Magic now, but it wasn't something that I did a lot before I played Hearthstone like semi regularly.
So let's break this down. So you see a warrior, and
Mhm.
that let's say that equates to like Mardu colors. You
Right.
basically know your opponents on Mardu colors before anything has even happened.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And more than that, I mean, honestly, you have a better idea than that most of the time because a lot of the heroes only have one deck that they'll play. So you just pretty much know like 25 of the 30 cards they're playing or more.
Silly boy, I was on even paladin.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, sometimes there are ones that'll throw you for a loop, but
So
what's
so
interesting
how
about
did you
this?
how did you apply that to Magic?
I just want to say what's interesting about this is that like before I was playing Hearthstone a lot, I just would play whatever the best card was in my hand, or like make whatever the best onboard play was without thinking about my opponent's next turns or whatever. But if you do that in Hearthstone, you're just going to lose like every game because of the way that it works. Your opponent's just a lot more likely to have the exact right card on the turn that they need it because of the partial mulligan rules and just the how deep they get into their deck by the time they get to that turn.
Right.
So like for instance, there was a card called Ultimate Infestation that cost 10 mana, and in Hearthstone you pretty much had it on turn 10 every single time. So it was very important to plan your turn 9 around what them doing that on turn 10, and if possible make that the worst possible it can be. So in Magic now, I'm always thinking about that kind of thing. Like, okay, what if they have the Wrath this turn? What if they have, the Scarab God? Whatever the big pillars of the format are, you can kind of try to make that the worst possible play for them, if that makes sense. Like, the way that you lose games is your opponent gets to make the best possible play on curve.
Right.
So if you make them have to make a play where they're playing their Scarab God on turn 6 instead of turn 5 because they had to answer a threat of yours,
Right.
then that's just strictly better for you.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, and it's something that I think that I do. That's something that I think I do well in Magic. I think that's something that I've always been good at. So maybe I need to apply that to Hearthstone a little bit more next time I try it out.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be familiar with the entire card pool, right, to make any of this work. But
Yeah, that's fair.
it's just interesting. Like I had never considered how important it was to avoid just getting curved out. I think that's the main goal in most games. Of Magic. Hearthstone is much the same, but Basically, if you can avoid letting your opponent play their best possible cards on curve, you're doing pretty good.
Anything else that Hearthstone had taught you that you wanted to bring up?
Um, I mean, I think it all kind of ties into the same thing. Oh, actually, you know what? Hearthstone taught me a lot about combat math
What about
because
combat math?
the combat math system in Hearthstone is actually a lot more complex than Magic because it's multiple turns. Instead of like Magic, you have one attack step and one block step, and then everything resets every turn. Whereas in Hearthstone, you kind of have to plan your attacks over multiple turns, so it just kind of exercised the right muscles to get my brain more adept at figuring out combat math.
Do you think that you're now also able to plan combat for multiple turns in Magic better?
Certainly, sometimes. I mean, it definitely. I think that the lethal setups are a lot more obvious in Hearthstone, so it's a lot easier to think about. If I deal them this much damage, how do I deal them the rest of the damage next turn?
Right.
So that's definitely something that's translated over to planning out turns in Magic.
Sure. That's fair. I think that specifically, the example you just gave, is something that I had to learn to get better at playing aggro decks just in general.
Right.
So, and in Hearthstone, at some point every deck just pivots, right? Like all
Yeah,
they're doing.
I was just gonna say in Hearthstone, basically every deck's the aggro deck. It's just when.
Yeah, and Hearthstone every deck just like turns a corner, it's just like face, 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 face.
Right.
So that's funny.
Yeah, the inability to block certainly, pushes that.
Absolutely. Do you want me to go to my next game? My first game?
Yeah, sure.
So my first game was basketball. Before, it's funny because, the two things that I did a lot before playing Magic, well, three things. I played a lot of video games too, but were basketball and competitive airsofting. And when I was doing this, I realized how much more basketball taught me than the other things that I was doing at that time. And the first thing that is pretty obvious, but dedicated and focused practice is the first thing. It's really funny because, how do you think you get better at free throws, Matt?
Shooting free throws.
Yeah, you just go shoot free throws.
Yeah.
The same thing is true of any jump shot that you're going to do in basketball. The same thing is true of dribbling. And you go do dribble drills to improve those muscles and to improve those things. And it's funny because it's kind of the same thing that playtesting an individual deck does for you in Magic. And I don't think that we realize that as Magic players we're straight up practicing. We're learning and practicing and making it easier for the muscle that is playing Magic, which is our brain.
Right. Yeah, I think you could even extend that to different things, right? Like the more you play against a control deck, the better you get at playing against counterspells specifically. Like
Right.
that's one aspect of the game that's going to translate over multiple archetypes, but
And so dedicated focus practice is something that basketball taught me that, I think that I honestly struggle with in Magic a lot of the time. And, that I think that I've been better at this year, but I think that it's one that every time I see a post from myself about going to the gym to dribble for 2 hours, I'm like, I never do that in Magic. Like, there's not even like, like that's not a thing I do in Magic. And I mean, I play a lot of Smash right now, and I still have a hard time like going and practicing, up tilt into up air into up specials. Like that's just boring to me. But I think that when you're process oriented, which is also something that I think basketball taught me, it's a lot easier when you enjoy the process, and finding ways to do that is important. And I'm also a weirdo that really just enjoyed shooting 60 free throws and then doing layup lines and then shooting 60, like I'm weird. So a lot of people are like, that sounds like the dullest, most boring thing. I'm like, no, I want to make 50. Let's go.
so this kind of segues into my next thing, which I'm gonna group together a few things.
Okay.
So these things are StarCraft, Smash Brothers, and I took some jujitsu lessons, and these all kind of tie together.
Can I finish my basketball ones first?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So because I think that there are two specific things that I want to bring up, and then Smash is my next one too. So it'll be good that yours is that as well. So the next one is imitating better players. This might sound really stupid, especially from like I'm 5'8". I weigh, at the time I weighed like I don't know 140, 160. at the time, and you'd think, well, there's not even a person that you can relate yourself to that is good at basketball. And that's actually not true. I actually was watching a college game one time, and I watched a smaller player. I think he was about 5'9", 5'10", contort his body during a layup, and then switch, and then rather than having to do a reverse layup, he contorted his body backwards and actually did a fade shot. And then I watched that whenever another player was taller than him that was guarding him, he would actually do what's called a reverse layup, which is when you go up for a layup, you should go from the other side of the hoop. And the reason that he did that is actually so that the player couldn't block it, because the hoop is actually blocking the person from blocking the shot. And so that was something that I was like, okay, well, I'm a smaller player. This is something that I can implement. And I started practicing reverse layups, and it drastically improved any time that I was being guarded by a larger person, which for me was all the time. So I think that, seeing what people are doing, we get asked this question in Magic all the time. I mean, even I think last week we talked about how we would watch streamers look for, deck guides, things like that. Learning from people that are putting themselves in the situation that you're trying to put yourself into, and that are in those situations, is really something that basketball taught me that I've implemented all across the board on Magic. And then the last one is the importance of fundamentals. It just talked about spending 2 hours dribbling, for example, and talk about shooting 60 free throws and then doing dribble drills and things like that. It is really, really important, I think, in Magic, to find out where you're at with your fundamentals, because those are going to be the building blocks for you to build onto your game. You can't get better at something if you don't know the thing prior to it. It's just not going to work. I think Smash is also teaching me this a lot, where it's like, well, yeah, I want to do this. Well, it's like, okay, well, first you have to know what the freak fair is, and also what you have to learn how to roar. But before you can learn how to roar, you have to learn how to. I mean, these are just nonsense terms that you have to know what they mean. I'm saying this on the podcast, and people are going, I don't know what any of this crap Spencer's saying is. That's the point. The same thing is true of Magic, right? Where the number of times that I think that I remember so early on people asking me a question in Magic when I first started and being like, I don't know. I don't know why you're asking that question. And
Right.
and that's huge. Like, when you can change that around and you have a baseline for things and can build on that base, that's going to be really important and really help your game improve.
Yeah, definitely. I know this comes up a lot in Magic because I remember watching a Mythic Championship recently, and I watched Javier Dominguez make the best play of the tournament, in my opinion, but it was way too subtle and would have taken probably 2.5 minutes to explain if they were trying to explain it to the viewers. So it's like one of those things where you couldn't possibly see this play if you didn't already have a large foundation of like what was going on in this game.
Yeah.
It's definitely important to learn things in the right order.
Yeah.
It just won't mean anything to you if you
and that's where
jump to the
fundamentals
end.
come from, right? Like, that's the reason that people have made this word for this thing, right? It's that
Right.
they are the building blocks, the foundation that you need to move forward. And I think that basketball, with dribbling, how you move your arm, right? Like, it's stuff like that. I mean, how many times anybody can pick up a ball and throw it at a hoop, right, Matt? But
Right.
knowing that, like, actually, if you want this to go in a higher percentage of the time, here is actually how your arm should look to make that happen. And
Right.
that's just something that I think that Magic players don't realize that they're doing a lot of the time. So I think that first of all, inside of gaming specifically, I think we're really bad at sharing with the community what the fundamentals are that they should be working on. Right? Like, it's really easy to assume that people are either on your level or close enough to your level that they just know things, but you really don't know where somebody's coming from. So attacking and blocking and things like that. The other thing Magic players are really bad at is we love skipping to the parts that we find interesting, even though they might not have mastered the thing that they need to master yet.
Right.
So
Definitely agree. I mean, some of the fundamentals are pretty straightforward, but not everybody does them, right? Like, one of my favorite things to say is that you should have a reason not to spend all your mana is a big thing, right? Like, for instance, I remember teaching somebody how to play Magic, and they were questioning whether they should play their 2-drop on turn 2. And to me, it seemed very intuitive, but I'd never considered why you would think about not doing that. And I think what's the biggest takeaway here is that you should always do the thing that's going to spend all of your mana unless you have a good reason not to.
Right. But asking yourself that question is important.
Yeah, it's definitely a good thing to do. This person was a little bit crippled by indecision, so it was not the best thing to be asking themselves. But
fair enough. So should we move on to StarCraft Smash and what was the other one you said?
I took some jujitsu lessons at some point.
I thought you said you were gonna do rock paper scissors.
I am. We're getting to that.
Oh, all right. Sorry, yeah. Spoiler. Oh,
yeah, huge spoiler. So when I was taking jujitsu, my Shihan at the time would say that practice does not make perfect. Practice makes permanent. Perfect practice makes perfect. And that was something that I've really taken to heart in a lot of different games. Like, for instance, StarCraft. Like, I don't ever practice doing. There's like some shortcuts you can take to try to make your bad plays better. Especially with like Terran. I know, like, I don't want to get into too specific things because
sure,
it's not going to mean anything.
Then we
to
start talking about Rards and Smash. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, exactly.
I was there a couple minutes ago.
yeah, exactly. But long story short, there are some shortcuts that you can take to make up for bad plays that you made earlier. But I would never let myself do that, because if I do that, then I will always fall into those pitfalls. And I think this is something that is important to realize in Magic too, right? Like, if you're practicing all the time, but you're always keeping sketchy one-landers, you're not really learning anything other than how to keep sketchy one-landers and maybe sometimes get there.
Yeah, this is a really, really funny point, because I think about this a lot with like people who pick up Magic decks, and they're like, oh yeah, pick up the aggro deck because it'll get you the most wins to start. And it's like, well, that could be true. Also, it could be the wrong way to go, because if they are practicing not knowing how to play there are very complicated decks. I know Mason was telling me that somebody, when asked which modern deck that they should pick up, they should just pick up Affinity because it's the easiest deck to play. And it's just like, I think that we get into bad habits of trying to help people get to the wrong point, if that makes sense. And it's because we're teaching them bad habits at the very beginning.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, the way you phrased that. It's actually, so for what it's worth, I'm not perfect about this either. I've realized recently playing Smash that I do actually have a lot of bad habits that I've picked up since practicing. And I've practiced these bad habits to the point where I need to break them now.
Like shields?
No. Well, not break them like shields, no. No. I could get into the specifics about the habits, but, it's also a waste of time, so.
No, I think that, understanding, I'm the same way in Smash right now. As I'm getting better, I actually remember this. This is so funny, especially when you consider like the exact advice that I gave about the basketball, right? Where I said, learning from better people. So when I first started playing Super Smash Bros., one of the things that I did is I watched some videos. In fact, now I think you've watched the same videos. It's like the top 8 or top 10 bad habits that you probably have in Smash. And right. I watched this before, like, really early on.
Before you developed these habits?
Exactly. And now I have those habits. And the video came up in my feed again. I was like, oh my gosh, I do like all of these. But it's that kind of stuff where it's like, it's because I hadn't learned some of the fundamental things that I need to learn. I was trying to skip ahead. I was trying to go too far into the future, and now Future Spencer's like, well, you should listen to that guy, because he was right. You do this all the time.
Yeah, I think the important takeaway here is that, like, practicing is going to make habits, and if you are doing the wrong things in practice, you're going to make the wrong habits.
Yeah, it's actually really important in, like, bodybuilding. My brother, I did powerlifting with Manny for a little while, and everybody knows, like, if you do the lift wrong, then you're not working out the correct muscle. You're gonna, be all wonky looking when you leave the gym. So, what was your so StarCraft specifically is the one that you said, you're making sure that, and in Smash you said you're making sure that you are practicing perfect, so that practice can make you permanent at being perfect.
Permanently perfect.
Yeah, just trying to be the big left up in here, man. So for me, there's a lot that I think Smash specifically has taught me in the last couple months. It's funny because I put building a foundation for Smash, which is the same thing as the importance of fundamentals. But I actually think that Smash probably taught me that better than basketball did, where, it's like In Magic, right? You have player mistakes, and those player mistakes are pretty costly. Magic is much more close to something like basketball than it is to something like Smash, just because it's a long grind through a long match with both Magic and with basketball. Whereas with something like Smash, a lot of times, you make a mistake and that's it. That's the whole thing. That mistake was the end of it, and that can certainly happen in both basketball and in Magic. But I think it happens a little bit less. And I think that having a foundation is really important in Magic. And it's something that I have taken for granted a lot. And also I think that you know the other thing we talked about how we do things out of order sometimes, and I think the other thing is as you start winning, you build upon that thing rather than building a complete foundation often. And I think that Magic players should more often try and build that complete foundation first.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you notice that you're winning more with burn or whatever, but you want to improve as a Magic player, then sometimes taking some more losses, might be the right way to
And
go.
the same thing is true.
Or vice versa. Like I'm not picking on burn players or
Yeah.
whatever. Like, I mean, I lose with burn like all the time. That deck is beyond me. So
Yeah, I completely agree. The next one that I have is learning new ways to learn. So, in there's a book that I recommend to people all the time. It's called Managing Oneself. It's on Audible. So if you're listening to this podcast, you probably have Audible because you're probably a person that learns through listening or watching videos. And one of the things that it talks about is understanding the type of learner that you are. And I know for a fact that the best way that I learn is through watching videos and listening. So for me, I did a lot more of that with Smash, and I realized that I need to do it more in Magic. It's a little bit harder in Magic. I don't think there's a ton of extremely high level Magic. It's weird. Smash has a lot of really good video content for beginners and also intermediate players. So it's been really easy for me to find it, but it also makes me wonder, like, should we be making more of this type of content for Magic players to help them get to the point where they can be? And it's also taught me about myself and how I learn, and it specifically has made me better when I'm watching a Magic player stream. I've noticed since I started playing Smash, I get more out of certain streamers and also know what streamers I'm looking for a lot more than I did. And the type of Magic content that I'm consuming now has changed a lot because of Smash. So
very nice. Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense why you would say that you've learned, mostly the idea of fundamentals a lot more from Smash than basketball, even because in Smash you basically have to do everything in order. Like, there's almost no way to skip to a certain point.
right.
But you can do that in things like Magic, right? Like, you could skip over like an important building block and still get to a spot. It just won't be as good as if you did know that thing.
Right. I mean, think about it this way, okay? I'm going to use Cobblade as an example of this because I remember the first time I had one of the highest elos in my state, and in the country. I had this extremely high elo. Okay, and I got it through playing a ton of green-white quest that just dumpstered all over Cobblade and dumpstered over a bunch of different decks, right? So I just picked a great deck for the metagame and just my rating shot up, right? So, but eventually, I think it was Feast and Famine. Anyway, either way, Cobblade got better. I think it got Dismember, it got Batterskull, and the quest deck was no longer good. So I had to pick up Cobblade and learn Cobblade because that was the only good deck. That was the only good deck. And I was still winning with Cobblade because you didn't play against Cobblade every round, and it was pretty easy to beat the people who weren't playing Cobblade. But I remember the first time that I watched somebody brainstorm with a Jace and put 2 Squadron Hawks back on top of their deck. And I was like, what just happened? And then they cracked a fetch land, and my mind was blown. And that is, how do I not know that already, Matt? Like, I know what card advantage is, but the thing is I don't know that I knew what virtual card advantage was at the time.
Sure. Yeah. The first time, Brainstorm is just the best example of that one by so much, right? Just the effect Brainstorm I mean, in that case, it's actually not virtual card advantage.
Yeah,
That's just actual. That's real card
I mean,
advantage.
once you cast out of the Squadron Hawk, it's just
you
over.
actually just drew 3 cards in that scenario.
Right.
But I mean, brainstorm in general is just a great example of virtual card advantage and something that's really important to understand.
So
like, there's very little difference. Like, honestly, the Squadron Hawk Jace thing, while cute, almost never came up because there's almost no difference between brainstorming and drawing 3 cards and brainstorming just the regular way.
Right.
Because you're going to have cards that just don't do anything so often that,
right.
Those cards were basically zeros.
But the shuffle effect was good.
Yeah, I mean, shuffling after a brainstorm is important. I mean,
so anyway, I think that the last thing that Smash kind of has taught me, and I've been applying more to Magic lately, is kind of humility without being self-deprecating. I think that this is something that Magic players have gotten a lot worse at, that I want to get better at, and that I'm okay to. I want to be confident in. I want to feel okay to be confident in Magic. And I think that when you are that, I think that your results reflect that in Magic a lot. Like, I think that if you watch somebody like Brad Nelson, I find that he does a lot better when he's confident. And I think that's just true of all of us. And to pretend anything otherwise is silly. So, and I think that, Smash has brought me some humility because, man, am I bad at it. But I think that I can apply that same kind of humility to Magic. And, like, here are the things that I am not great at right now. Here are the things that I am confident in, and let me lean on those confidences and then lift myself up in those places where I'm humble so that they can become areas of confidence as well, but also understanding, where I came from in those areas.
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, I think that I liked what you said about being self-deprecating as well, because I think that that's something that's become kind of popular in Magic, and I'm going to admit that I'm kind of part of the problem on that one, especially
we all are. I am too.
Yeah. In our group, I feel like that's definitely become more of a thing recently. But I mean, by recently, I mean like the last few years. But it's something worth working on. It's important to like you said, know where you are falling short, but also, understand that you are better at this game than you once were.
Yeah. We all start from a place of, and the other problem is that the gap gets so much wider the better that you get in Magic. I didn't come into the other thing is I didn't come into Smash thinking that it was easy. I had watched Smash tournaments of Melee and had, and had seen documentaries on the game. Like, I knew, I was like, all right, well, this is something that's so far outside of my wheelhouse. In Magic, I think that, you start winning your local events, and you just think you're hot stuff. And the truth is like you have to. I don't know. I don't know what it is about suddenly being cool to be less than you are. But, like, I think legitimately I am surrounded by some pretty freaking good Magic players in my life. I think that you and Mason are just, I mean, they're the two people that I play Magic with the most. And I think that you're both great. I think that, I think that Mason's results are going to really shine this year, and I'm excited for him. I don't know. I think that pretending like you're not one of like we're not what we are, I guess is my point. Is I don't think that's helpful for your Magic game.
Yeah, I agree.
You have to build on top of the things that you're good at eventually, right? And if you're not willing to admit the things that you're good at because it's not cool to be good at something, I don't know. I just think that's something that Smash has taught me recently.
Yeah, I think that just from an outside perspective, it's a lot easier to see what people are doing better at Smash than it is at Magic.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Like, if you knew nothing about Magic other than like the basic rules, you wouldn't really be able to see how somebody's playing better than somebody else.
That's
but
also why it taught me that.
Even
right?
without knowing the rules, you could tell how much better somebody is at Smash than somebody else.
Right. I completely agree. But I also think that's why it helped me in Magic, right? Where I saw this in Smash because it's so much easier. And now I can apply that to Magic and say, okay, well, you know what? I mean, if we're being honest, that's why I played Ramp at that 1K, right? It was like, you know what? I know how to play this deck. I know what matchups are good. I know how to mulligan with this deck. And I don't think that this deck is this much better. And I think I honestly think that Smash made me pick that deck for that tournament. And it's just a 1K, right? So why does it matter? But those are the tournaments that matter to me right now. So I'm going to put my heart into those ones at this time. And I don't know. I think I made a good choice because of that, and I think that Smash helped with that for me.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to say this. I know this is kind of off topic, but the more that I've learned about Smash, the more that I've realized how much I don't know. So it's kind of the opposite of Magic in that way. That like when you first look at Magic, you don't. It's impossible to know what you don't know because there's just so much that you don't know.
Yeah,
I guess it's actually not the opposite. It's actually
it's
the
the
very
same.
much the same.
It's
Yeah.
the same.
But as I've started getting better at Smash, I've realized even more what these players are doing that's much better than their opponents, and it's been really interesting. Like, you know how they say whenever you learn something, it illuminates an area that's bigger than the. I don't know how I'm trying to say what I'm trying to say, but if you imagine lighting up an area
Hmm.
as the circle of knowledge that you have gets bigger, you can also see more of what you don't know. So
Right.
like your
You get to see more corners
your
of the room.
ignorance your
You're like
ignorance
it's
gets bigger as well.
yeah, it's true. It's true. I mean, it's just there's all this space that you don't know exists because you can't
Mhm.
see it, and then once it lights it, you're able to see those areas a little bit
Right.
clearer, but still like they're
But you can
still
just see how much
undiscovered.
more there is to
Right.
know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's true. So talk to me about rock paper scissors.
So I've long had the theory that basically every game is just an advanced version of rock paper scissors.
Okay.
And I think that holds true in most games. It obviously isn't a perfect rule. Like there's like, checkers and chess. I don't believe those are rock paper scissors. Although there could be strategies within the game that are a little bit rock paper scissors. I don't actually know enough about the
Sure.
strategy to know that. But yeah, I mean, in Magic, you can pretty much tell in most healthy metagames there's going to be a rock paper scissors dynamic. Um, and the same has been true for basically every game that I've played. If the game is healthy and balanced, it's going to basically be rock beats scissors, scissors beats paper, paper beats rock. And the reason that this is important to understand is that when you're metagaming in Magic, you need to understand that you're sacrificing something by targeting the best deck, right? It's the rock for a reason. So if you're going to play paper, you got to understand that you're going to lose the scissors.
Right.
And sometimes that's right, but oftentimes it's not. So
I mean, you got to be. I mean, I think Magic players have adopted the always rock mentality in a lot of cases.
yeah, I mean, I think that that's certainly been trending that way for a couple of years now. Like,
So,
I mean, we've
so
seen the most
let's actually talk about that. What is the always rock mentality, just for the listeners?
just playing the best deck.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's funny because like you might be saying to yourself, "This is an oversimplification." Well, that's the point. Yeah, it's really funny at work. I get accused of oversimplifying all the time. They're like, "That's way more complicated than that." I'm like, "All right, but let's break it down to the base." And the thing is that's true in Magic. Like, I think that we've adopted an always rock mentality in a lot of cases, and it's about the levels. And rock paper scissors is a meta game. Like that's the whole game.
right. Yeah,
If the meta game is
it's
always
literally about
rock, then
leveling
you
your
should
opponent.
pick paper.
Right, right.
Oh man.
I mean, it is not a direct translation, right? Because sometimes there are formats in Magic or other games where rock beats paper. Rock just breaks right through the paper.
Yeah, sometimes rocks are really heavy, and that's
Yeah,
fine.
it's a flaming rock.
Yeah, I think that one of the overarching themes, if do you have anything else on this, or do you want me to?
No, I mean that was basically my thing with rock paper scissors.
Okay. Do you have anything else before I wrap up?
Uh, no, that was pretty much my thoughts.
I think I would highlight a couple of things from kind of this discussion. I'm also, first of all, thank you for suggesting this topic, Matt. I thought it was really fun, and it was different. It was it was a lot. I didn't know what your list was. You didn't know what my list was. Like, this is a very different style of podcast. So listeners, please give us the feedback. If you like it, you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button. If you're not, you're listening, leave us a review. Let us know how much you loved this episode specifically, or things that we could have done better. But it was different, and I'm excited for 2020 for this podcast because I want to do more different things and try to expand what we're doing on the show, and be more humble. And I think this episode helped it. But if I were to wrap this up, it would be one: what are your fundamentals that you're working on? What are the fundamentals that you have? And what is your next step after that? After that, I would say you got to learn rock paper scissors because sometimes the metagame is always rock. I,
Everything is a more advanced version of rock paper scissors. It's gonna help you in every game.
I think that the other thing that both you and I hinted at was kind of finding, learning from people you talk about your jujitsu master. You talked about the people you've watched in Smash and how they've grown your own knowledge just from watching them. And it's funny. I think that that's a shortcut that a lot of people love to take, and it's certainly going to get you pretty far. But I think that then applying those things is the next thing that we've both had to learn. No matter what game we're playing, no matter what activity you're doing, applied practice is going to be it's going to go leaps and bounds. So
Definitely. I think also I would like to point out that you can learn all these things just playing Magic, right? Like, for instance, when I was bringing up my Hearthstone thing, you were saying that that was something you already got from Magic.
yeah,
This Hearthstone was just the thing that helped me understand what it
absolutely.
was that I was trying to
Yeah,
practice.
I think that the same. Like, I didn't. I think the same thing when I talked about dedicated practice. Right? It's like I never realized that that's what play testing specific matchups is. I mean, that's all it is, right? Like when you go sit down at your LGS and somebody brings Tron and you want to play test against Tron, you're like, hey, will you play? That is dedicated practice. You are specifically trying to learn that matchup. I mean, and the other thing, Matt, is that is just something we did a lot. Like we did that a lot when we first started playing Magic. We had every legacy deck proxied. We had every standard deck proxied. Like we went to town.
Yeah, there's other things you can do that are also dedicated practice. I remember reading something on the Facebook group, I believe recently, where somebody had their goals for 2020. One of their goals was to become better at mulliganing. And this is something you can do some pretty easy at-home dedicated practice with, and which is just, draw a bunch of hands.
Yeah, we'll do another Sneak Keeper Ditch episode. Shout out to the A teams that came up with that. But that's something we used to do in the car. You guys hated it because I'd always do it in the car. But like, how many times have you watched me draw a hand with Jund, Matt?
Probably a lot. Probably almost as many hands as I've drawn with Jund.
But so for those who don't know, just because I think that we should say what it is. Sneak Keeper Ditch is just a game to bring up conversation. The A team, I don't know if they invented it or they just brought it to the forefront. But basically, everybody in the group picks Sneak, Keep, or Ditch when you draw an opening hand, and then you argue your points. So Sneak is snap, keep. Keep is obviously I would keep this, but I don't think it's that great. And then Ditch is get rid of it. I'm out. I'm not on this anymore. And I think that the variations between Sneak and Keep have actually led to much better conversations than you would ever expect something so silly to do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think a lot of times you're going to be in line with whether it's, like there's rarely going to be a Sneak versus a Ditch, right?
Right.
But the having the segue there or the
variation.
Bridge, yeah,
I agree.
it's really helped.
Cool. Well, that is going to do it for this week. You can follow me at Spencer13H. You can follow Matt at The Witch Cling on Twitter. You can follow the podcast at CCMTG. You can check out our sponsors at PureMTGO.com and Oasis Games. You can join that Facebook group that Matt was talking about, become a patron of $5 or more, become a constructed critic. We already posted our questions for this month in that group. We'll be posting it on the Patreon at patreon.com/CCMTG soon. Matt, I'm told not to talk about this, but I think our tokens might be done in a little bit. So shout out to Mason Clark. But I posted a special thing of Obi in the group. So if you want to see what the Obi tokens are going to look like, they're right there. With that being said, Matt, you suggested a change to the final segment. So we are going to make Deck Doctor actually one of the type of episodes we do for Patreon only. And we will be talking about what we play and why at the end of each week on Constructive Criticism. With that said, Matt, this week, what are you playing and why?
In Standard, I'm playing Jund Sacrifice. I realized that Rakdos just had a pretty nice showing, but I think that you can tune Jund Sacrifice to beat basically anything if you know what the established metagame is. In Pioneer, that one's a little bit tough, actually. I guess a lot of these are going to change with Theros, so I guess I won't go into that yet. But I do have a sweet Pioneer idea for after Theros comes out.
You're not going to spoil it on the show?
No, well, I will. We'll talk about it later. This is for another episode.
Okay.
Anyway, so in Pioneer right now, I would play the Dredgeless Dredge. In Modern, I'm playing a tournament tomorrow, or I guess the day after tomorrow, and I will be playing Bant Snowblade. And yeah, those are the formats that are relevant.
So why did you end up on Bant?
Well, I think that I played a lot of the mid-range Urza deck because I thought that was the best deck. And I realized more and more that Urza was the worst card in the deck. And I thought I was completely crazy when I was thinking this, because this was just even, months ago that I was feeling this way. And then I noticed that a lot of good players started playing Bant Snow instead of Urza. And it honestly looks like almost the exact same deck, except for...
Yeah, just the Mind Sculptor.
Yeah, you replace Jace the Mind or Urza with Jace the Mind Sculptor, yeah. So I felt pretty validated when I saw that happening. I tried the Bant Snow version, or the control version, rather, and found that I was having trouble closing out games. And sure. I think if you're great, that deck might just be better. But I kind of wanted to give myself a little bit of a... wiggle room. Yeah, a little bit of a crutch.
So for me in Standard, I just got back into it this week. I started with some Embercleave decks and some Jund Food. I don't know that I've seen anything to believe that Jund Food isn't the best deck right now still. I have seen reason to believe, though, that Fires might be a lot worse than it has been in the past. I think specifically because Embercleave has become so popular, people just have a lot of Thrashing Brontodons now. And that just naturally is... It's funny because before they were playing like Artifact Hate that was specific to the Cat deck, right? And then now they kind of, because of the Cat plus Fires, it's now Thrashing Brontodon. And it weirdly hurt the Fires deck, I think, more than it hurt the other decks.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think Brontodon came into the forefront because of Trail of Crumbs, right? Like you needed a way to deal with that.
Yeah, no, that too. I mean, that's the point though, right? Is that like it was mono artifact because of Embercleave plus Cat, and now it's now it's Brontodon. Now Fires is like, well, a lot worse for me. So I would just play Jund. I did Ultimate Garruk today, which was hot. I still think that I don't know how many Casualties of War is correct right now, but I still do like Garruk in the main deck. So.
I could certainly believe that less casualties is correct. I think that going forward, basically the way to beat the Rakdos deck, if we want to get into specifics, is just like having an answer to Embercleave, right? That's how you're going to lose almost every game. So, whether it's main deck Brontodons or some kind of other disenchant.
Yeah. I mean, even I have Abrupt Decay, or not Abrupt Decay, Assassin's Trophy main deck, and knowing when those Assassin's Trophies are going to become important is, that's half the battle. So
right.
So yeah, I would play Jund Food there. In Pioneer, I was looking at both Stompy and Ramp. I still don't have a reason to believe that Ramp is not one of the better decks. I think that it can be tuned to kind of adjust to the metagame, as it's more of a control deck than typical Ramp decks are. The deck was trying to speed up right now, which I think is actually worse against something like the dredge decks.
Interesting. So, are they cutting some of their answers for that?
Yeah, they're playing. I mean, some of them are playing mono elves and not land ramp spells too, which I think is also worse against that deck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's the reason that you feel that way?
Well, so there's a couple things. One, it makes you specifically only faster, right? Whereas something like a Boreal Grazer slows them down plus makes you fast, and I think the combination is better.
Are they cutting our Boreal Grazers?
Some of them were, yeah.
Okay, interesting.
See, that's the face I made too.
The problem I have with that is that you're specifically... Oh, and I guess you're not playing Field of the Dead anymore, so actually it doesn't matter.
No.
Yeah, never mind.
That's why the switch is happening, right? It's just like...
Right.
It's just, you always have that 3 mana, which is very important in the deck, and I totally get it, but I think that it does actually hurt that matchup. Yeah. Also, none of them were playing Scavenger Grounds before, and that's something that I was already playing. So,
sure.
And, I think you could even afford to play more of them. I don't think you need something like Arch at all in that deck. So if you wanted to just, have more Scavenger Grounds, I think that's totally reasonable in that deck.
I agree. I think with 4 World Breakers, the idea that you need Arches of Araska is just mostly nonsense.
That's every time I had it, I was like, when am I going to use this? I use 13 mana every turn.
Possibly have mana for this. Yeah.
It's got 6 to draw a card. I could have a 7/7 for this. Yeah. So I'd be on that deck still, and I think for modern, I haven't tried it yet, but I plan on trying the Field of the Dead Oko deck. Tell me now, Matt. Should I try the Wargate version or not?
It certainly never hurts to try it. I think you should try that version because at least it'll basically teach you the things you need to know, right?
Yeah,
Like
but
starting
if it's
off
broken, I'll know.
well, starting off with that version is better because it will still give you an idea of what the blue-green version is doing, right? And then you also get to know whether Wargate is good.
There we go. Matt, you simplifying the process for me. If you want a simplified process, don't forget to check out our sponsors over at Pure MTGO and Oasis Games. They're awesome. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. Let us know what you're playing and why. Leave a comment, hit that like button, hit that sub button, leave a review on iTunes. Thank you so much, and we'll see everybody next week with another episode of Constructed Criticism.